All right, here we have our fifth installment of our Beowulf annotations, and we're at the second battle starting. Starts off, of course, with prologue introducing Grendel, how he's mad that he didn't get to the party, and so he then, kills everyone at the party. To Hrothgar, sending out word, we need help. Second installment is Beowulf introduction, boasts on himself, says he's going to do this thing, and of course, third, battle with Grendel, and he proves that he does do that. And then what else? We lastly, in the fourth installment, had our intro to Grendel's mom, who's like, "What? Mess with my boy?" And she breaks into the mead hall where everyone thinks it's cool and everything's fine and they're sleeping, and ends up killing a bunch and mainly taking Hrothgar's main friend. And also she takes Grendel's severed arm. And here we go. Our focus right now will be all of what influenced Tolkien and biblical allusion. Of course, we're looking for kennings, Caesura, alliteration, stock epithet. And if you've seen my previous videos, you will know what that means. Okay, the battle with Grendel's mother. Beowulf accepts Hrothgar's challenge, and the king and his men accompany the hero to the dreadful lair of Grendel's mother. Fearlessly, Beowulf prepares to battle the terrible creature. He leapt into the lake, Beowulf, would not wait for anyone's answer. The heaving water covered him over. For hours he sank through the waves. This guy would be world-class freediver. At last he saw the mud of the bottom. I mean, how many thousands of feet? And all at once the greedy she-wolf, who'd ruled those waters for 500 years, discovered him, saw that a creature from above had come to explore the bottom of her wet world. Hey guys, how cool is that she calls him that a creature? She's calling him a creature. I love that. Does she not know that she's the creature? Here we go. She welcomed him in her claws. That's cool language right there. Of course, we know what the meaning of welcomed means. Clutched at him savagely, but could not harm him. Tried to work her fingers through the tight ring-woven mail on his breast. Here we have the influence that Tolkien took, right? The ring-woven mail. This would possibly be what's referenced as mithril in the Lord of the Rings saga, that sort of elven-made mail, which is impervious to any weapon. Cool stuff right there. Anyway, so she's trying to get at him. She's grabbing him. She's trying to just take her claws through him, but his woven mail shirt won't allow it. So she scratches in vain. Then she carried him, armor and sword and all, to her home. He struggled to free his weapon and failed. The fight brought other monsters swimming to see her catch, a host of sea beasts who beat at his mail shirt, stabbing with tusks and teeth as they followed along. And if you were at the bottom of the ocean, would you be terrified? Then he realized suddenly that she'd brought him into someone's battle hall. And there, the water's heat could not hurt him. So kind of like this undersea cave that's full of oxygen, which apparently he doesn't need because he's been battling underwater, nor anything in the lake attacking him through the building's high arching roof. A brilliant light burned all around him, the lake itself like a fiery flame. We referenced Revelation, talking about hell, the lake that burns with eternal fire. Essentially where they are, perhaps. There's the illusion. Then he saw the mighty water witch. We got to grab some alliteration since we haven't done it yet. Water witch, and swung his sword. Its ring-marked blade straight at her head. Sorry, his ring-marked blade straight at her head. So he's used the sword before. It's hit chainmail before. He's seen battle. Anyway, the iron sang its fierce song. Swing! Sang Beowulf's strength, personified blade here, but her guest discovered that, her guest meaning Beowulf, that no sword could slice her evil skin, right? So apparently maybe she is enchanted just as her son Grendel was, so that no human weapon could harm her. Notice that the human weapon has a name. Hrunting, that Hrunting could not hurt her, was useless now when he needed it. It's cool that they named their weapons. And remember, these would have been passed on as heirlooms made by some smith's high art, as it's referenced. The smith being almost a magician who could do things with metal no one understood because he would guard his secrets, and they were very valued in their culture. So, Hrunting, the sword named Sword, could not hurt her. They wrestled. She ripped and tore and clawed at him, bit holes in his helmet, and that too failed him for the first time in years. Of being worn to war, it would earn no glory. It was the last time anyone would wear it. So this heirloom helmet of his has failed in battle. But Beowulf longed only for fame. And here we have a bit of hubris, right? Hamartia meaning tragic human flaw. Hubris being a part of that, just being one flaw in people. And he has a whole lot of that, excessive human pride. Right? Knowing in Scripture that it comes before the fall. And this might indicate that he is, in fact, a tragic hero. I wonder if he's aware that he is full of hubris. So he longed for fame. He leaps back into battle. He tossed his sword aside, angry. The steel-edged blade lay where he dropped it. If weapons were useless, he'd use his hands, the strength in his fingers. So fame comes to the men who mean to win it and care about nothing else. Again, there's that dichotomy. As Christians, and they would have been at this time telling the story about this ancient pagan story, they would have known that that wasn't as important, right? But again, we have a blend of pagan and Christian culture. He raised his arms and seized her by the shoulder. Anger doubled his strength. He threw her to the floor. She fell. Grendel's fierce mother and the Yates' proud prince. Two kennings, right? Grendel's fierce mother, Yates' proud prince, used in parallel kind of comparison there, was ready to leap on her. But she rose at once and repaid him with her clutching claws, wildly tearing at him. He was weary, that best and strongest of soldiers. And this is kind of interesting, that we have an admission by the writer here that Beowulf, this, Chris Hemsworth, Thor-like guy, is tired, right? Admitting to that. And that brings his humanity to us, and I love that. He was weary, that best and strongest of soldiers, a kenning for Beowulf. His feet stumbled, and in an instant she had him down, held helpless. Squatting with her weight on his stomach, she drew a dagger, brown and dried blood, and prepared to avenge her only son. So what's going to happen? Cliffhanger! But he was stretched on his back, and her stabbing blade was blunted by the woven mail shirt he wore on his chest. The hammered lynx held. The point could not touch him. He'd have traveled to the bottom of the earth, Edgetho's son, and died there if that shining woven metal had not helped. And holy God, who sent him victory, gave judgment for truth and right, ruler of the heavens, once Beowulf was back on his feet and fighting, right? We made chainmail, I've got some here, in class, and we know how hard it was to make that. And perhaps that's why this chainmail is just absolutely magical, right? The difficulty in putting it together gives it magical qualities, and he is being protected. And really, they're sort of endowing it with God's power, and there we have the pagan influence, right? We got to go to breastplate of, in New Testament scripture, and it fails me at this time, God forgive me. Then he saw hanging on the wall a heavy sword, hammered by giants. How cool is this? Strong and blessed with their magic. So this magic might be able to undo her magic, and it's probably a giant sword like David and Goliath. Hey, is this biblical allusion here? The best of all weapons, but so massive that no ordinary man could lift its carved and decorated length. He drew it from its scabbard, broke the chain on its hilt, and then, savage now, angry and desperate, lifted it high over his head and struck with all the strength he had left. He caught her neck and cut it through, broke bones and all. Her body fell to the floor lifeless. The sword was wet with her blood, and Beowulf rejoiced at the sight. Victory! Yes! Anyway, magical swords, magical weapons. Of course, we have in the sagas and Norse mythology, Thor's hammer. Once and future king, Anglo-Saxon mythology, early English and French mythology, Lady of the Lake, Excalibur, right? Cool stuff here. Where did it begin? Right here, perhaps? Okay, anyway, so her body fell, Beowulf rejoices. The brilliant light shone suddenly as though burning in that hall, and as bright as heaven's own candle, lit in the sky. That's kinning for the sun, I believe. He looked at her home, then following along the wall, went walking, his hands tight on the sword, his heart still angry. He was hunting another dead monster. Who's he looking for, guys? Grendel, quizás. He was hunting another dead monster and took his weapon with him for final revenge against Grendel's vicious attacks. His nighttime raids over and over, coming to Heorot when Hrothgar's men slept, killing them in their beds. Eating some on the spot, 15 or more, and running to his loathsome more. With another such sickening meal waiting in his pouch. But Beowulf repaid him for those visits, found him lying dead in the corner, armless, exactly as that fierce fighter had sent him out from Heorot, Beowulf the fierce fighter, then struck off his head, hey, speaking of David and Goliath, with a single swift blow. The body jerked for the last time, then lay still. Was it jerked for the last time? Was it almost dead? Mostly dead. Watch The Princess Bride, everybody. The wise old warriors who surrounded Hrothgar, like him staring into the monster's lake, saw the waves surging and blood spurting through. They spoke about Beowulf. All the graybeards. That's cool. Let's call old people graybeards. Or not, but it's cool, I think. They whispered together and said that hope was gone, that the hero had lost fame and his life at once and would never return to the living, come back as triumphant as he had left. Almost all agreed that Grendel's mighty mother, alliteration, the she-wolf, had killed him. Right? The sun slid over past noon, went further down. The Danes gave up, left the lake, and went home. Hrothgar with them. The Yeats stayed, sat sadly, watching. Okay? Imagining they saw their Lord, but not believing they would ever see him again. Sadness. Then the sword melted, blood-soaked, dripping down like water, disappearing like ice when the world's eternal Lord loosens invisible fetters and unwinds icicles and frost, as only he can, injecting Christian sort of beliefs. He who rules time and seasons, he who is truly, capital He, by the way, right? So, God, who's truly God. The monster's hall was full of rich treasures, but all that Beowulf took was Grendel's head and the hilt of the giant's jeweled sword. So now we have some more leaning on the Christian ideal of Beowulf not needing to take riches, but he does take a trophy. The rest of that ring-marked blade had dissolved. So his, I think, Hrunting, his sword, is gone. Or was it the giant sword that was magical? Let's see. I guess it would be the giant sword because her blood has melted in. Anyway, had dissolved in Grendel's steaming blood, boiling even after his death, and then the battle's only survivor swam up and away from those silent corpses, Beowulf. The water was calm and clean, the whole huge lake peaceful once the demons who'd lived in it were dead. Then that noble protector of all seamen swam to the land. That's a kinning for Beowulf, rejoicing in the heavy burdens he was bringing with him. He and all his glorious band of Yeats thanked God that their leader had come back unharmed. They left the lake together. The Yeats carried Beowulf's helmet and his mail shirt. Behind them, the waters slowly thickened as the monster's blood came seeping up. They walked quickly, happily across roads. All of them remembered, left the lake and the cliffs alongside it, brave men staggering under the weight of Grendel's skull, too heavy for fewer than 4 of them to handle. That's how big this thing was. 2 on each side of the spear jammed through it. Man, this is a video game, guys. Yet proudly of their ugly load and determined that the Danes, seated in Heorot, should see it. Soon 14 Yeats arrived, again with that number, 14, at the hall, bold and warlike, and with Beowulf, their lord and leader, they walked on the mead hall green. Then the Yeats' brave prince, kenning for Beowulf again, entered Heorot, covered with glory for the daring battles he had fought. He sought Hrothgar, and I wonder if that glory is blood. So he's looking for Hrothgar to salute him and show Grendel's head. He carried that terrible trophy by the hair and brought it straight to where the Danes sat, drinking, the queen among them. It was a weird and wonderful sight, and the warriors stared. And that's where we'll stop today. Man, they are flossing their victory, aren't they?